Really? I think I met her. Oh. All right, go ahead, Naomi, say it. Oh,
Yeah, we had you on, but that's okay.
well, praise the
He's
Lord
out here
now.
telling us bye. Sorry.
Oh, we heard him. Okay.
Now I wouldn't dare to embarrass Naomi. So don't even ask me to tell you what I feel like saying right now. Don't even ask me. Well, I want to just say it's been a real treat to be here. I've when I get into positions like this, I always well, I'd like to say I hesitate, but I really don't. There's just so many folks that it's been a treat. The Christiansons coming all the way from over by Memphis, seeing them again. Jocelyn, treat to see you. I don't think I'd ever met you, but we spoke on the phone. Yeah, and of course meeting Linda and Bobby and Barbara, um, Jean. Of course, Ben in the back, Andrew, what a pianist that guy is. Andrew, you can come down to our church in Florida anytime. I'll tell you, Andrew, you have a real gift. You do. You do. Well, Andrew, you were just given an invitation. Sure. It's great to visit with Kevin this afternoon. Brother Trotter? Yes, sir. Diane, you look a little bit squeamish, like, oh, I hope he doesn't remember me. And your husband, was it Ernie? Jesse. I knew it ended with an E. That's, you know. So, but, it's just been neat. And the ladies from Dayton, we had a roaring chat this afternoon. And a couple of my own church folk down home in Eustis came up to see their son at Wildwood. And as I was sitting eating my lunch, all of a sudden I saw them in the lunch line, Jesse and Yvonne Gilliman. What a treat it was to see them. What a treat. Even though Jesse did try to trip me just now, but that's another story, and Yvonne promised that she was going to take care of it, so I trust that she will. You know, as we in this camp, at least my part, um, you know, you I like to speak, of course. I do it on a regular basis. But sometimes um, I think as Seventh day Adventists, sometimes things get so concentrated that uh, we need an outlet. And so I'm going to make a proposition to you, and it's totally your decision. I have a meeting for this evening. COVID-19, the Wuhan Catholic Connection. And we can certainly do this talk. However, if you would like to have a Q&A instead, to give you an opportunity to say, I'm hearing this. Can you address that? Somebody said that. What do you think of, what it is it's a Q&A. It's not where you get on a soapbox and it's your time to give the sermon for the evening. That's not what it's about. And it's not about arguing, because I'm not going to argue with anybody about anything. If you have a question, because, folk, let's face it, what Paul said in Ephesians 4 is happening right before our eyes. We're being tossed to and fro. There is every wind of doctrine blowing today, every wind you can think of. So, by a show of hands, I'd like to say how many of you would prefer to have a Q&A this evening? If you would, raise your hand. Okay. Well, that the question was, well, if we have a Q&A, well, is there some way to see this? There's oodles of ways. Number one, we have it on our YouTube channel, Truth Triumphant Ministries YouTube. It's on there. I have it in my book, COVID-19, The Rest of the Story. It's, I think, the third chapter in the book. And I'm going to make this available to you tonight. So, what's that? Free? You know what, ma'am? I'm going to leave that with you. No, seriously. I didn't come up here to say, man, I could make some money off these books. You know what you can do. And if you can't, I'm just going to put them on a table, and I think I'll put a little basket there, and I'll just leave it. And if you want to come up, I have this book, The Secret Terrorist, Three Angels Over Africa, Enemy Unmasked, and COVID-19, The Rest of the Story. They'll be on the table. First come, first get them. And the finance, that's up to you. So if you want them to be free, ma'am, they're free. Question was, am I going to translate these into Spanish? The Secret Terrorist, I still have about, probably 10,000 of these in Spanish. This book, Three Angels Over Africa, it's not in Spanish. This one, The Enemy Unmasked, is. It was actually translated in Costa Rica. So I'd have to get some of those from the folk down there. And this book right now, in about a week and a half, it will be in Spanish. There's a delightful young couple, O'Neill and Wanda Perry, who are doing a wonderful ministry down in Ecuador. And when they heard that I was writing a book, they said, we'd like to see the manuscript. So once they saw it, they said, we will translate it into Spanish. So, sure. So, how many of you would like a Q&A? Raise your hand.
I had a question. My question was, is it possible to get an abbreviated edition of this and a mini Q&A as well? Is that possible?
Pastor Ben, Pastor Ben, Pastor Ben, how do I tell Brother Trotter I'll meet him outside later? Just come right out and say it. All right. This is what we'll do. This is what we'll do. We'll have this for those of you who would like to stay. We'll have an abbreviated Q&A. Okay? And before I start, I want to thank one other person. I don't see him here, but I want you to tell him I said this. Augustine gives the greatest massages. He's out back. Okay, so he probably hears me then. Now in the car, Ben asked me, how did things go with Augustine? I said, well, he beat me up. No, he did a great job. Did a great job. Um, I appreciate it very much. Okay, COVID 19, the Wuhan Catholic connection. Here we go. I think he answered your question. Again, it's in my book. All this information that we'll look at tonight, it's right in my book. You can take the book and tear out pages and paste and do whatever you want. Okay, okay. We've all been told it originated right there in Wuhan laboratory. But the Bible tells us something very differently because Revelation chapter 17 tells us that there is a power at the end of Earth's history called Babylon the Great, and it is from Babylon the Great, through her control of politicians, merchants, churches, it is through those entities that she works to carry out dastardly deeds to destroy liberty in this world. It's that simple. That simple. Now, so I just said that really this pandemic, it was planned right here. That's what I just said. Okay, if everybody didn't get that. It happened right here. This is where it was all planned. Now the question is though, who was used to carry it out? Who was used? Well, there's a man that we all have been taught over the last 7 months to believe basically that he's a brilliant, wonderful, loving man. Now that's what the impression has been left on our minds. Anthony Fauci, a wonderful man. Well, Business Insider and Newsweek magazine tell a different story. Listen to what they say. This is Business Insider, April 13, 2020. Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, warned members. Now, listen to this. He warned members of the incoming Trump administration in January of 2017 about the inevitability of a surprise outbreak of a new disease. Now, when did Donald Trump come into office, friend? He was elected in 2016. As the Trump administration came in 2017, Anthony Fauci said, there is no question that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases. Now, I thought he was a scientist and a doctor. That sounds to me like a prophet. Because he said, this is what's going to happen. Is he a prophet now? In a speech at Georgetown University, he made this comment and he added in the thing we are extraordinarily confident about is that we're going to see this in the next few years. Now, folk, when somebody says, I'm extraordinarily confident, that means basically, I guarantee it. Now, how could he be so confident? How did Fauci know? How did he know there would be a pandemic during the Trump administration? Is he a doctor or is he a prophet? The thing we're extraordinarily confident about is that we're going to see this in the next few years. 3 years before the pandemic called the coronavirus occurred, this man right here told the Trump administration it would happen. Is he a prophet? Did the Holy Spirit fall on him and help him see the future? How could he be so confident? How could he tell an audience at Georgetown University, a Jesuit school, that a pandemic would happen? How could he do that? Well, this was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. Was a Newsweek magazine article from Fred Guterl, April 28, 2020. He said this: Anthony Fauci is an advisor to President Donald Trump and something of an American folk hero. He's a hero. Now, who made him a hero? The media, Linda. That's exactly right. And who controls the media? We noticed last night the media is controlled by the wealthy. The wealthy are controlled by Rome. Rome tells the wealthy to tell the media what to say, and bingo. How do you think the media will portray you or me if we stand for what is right? How will the media portray us? We're the bad guys. We're the terrorists. That's right. That we should be silenced. That's right. I have to. Yes, sir. Fauci was known for his steady, calm leadership during the pandemic crisis. At least one poll shows that Americans trust Fauci more than Trump on the coronavirus pandemic. And few scientists are portrayed on TV by Brad Pitt. Apparently, Brad Pitt must have been playing a part, and Fauci was the man he played. Just last year, the NIAID, the organization led by Dr. Fauci, funded scientists. Funded scientists? Where? Yeah, at the Wuhan laboratory in China. At the Wuhan Institute of Virology and other institutions for work on gain-of-function research on, guess what? Bat coronaviruses. Does that sound familiar to any of us? In 2019, with the backing of Fauci's organization, the National Institute of Health committed $3.7 million over 6 years for research that included gain-of-function work. The program followed another $3.7 million 5-year project for collecting and studying bat coronaviruses, which ended in 2019, bringing the total to $7.4 million. Now, you understand that Anthony Fauci believes in the golden rule, right? That's right. The one who has the gold makes the rules. Now, who gave the gold to the Wuhan laboratory? Anthony Fauci gave it to the Wuhan lab. And the one who gives the gold makes the rules. $7.4 million. It ended in 2019. It was a 5-year project. They started doing this gain of function research in 2014. That's 3 years before Trump came into the White House. And by the time Trump came into the White House, Fauci was so sure of what was going on in the Wuhan laboratory, he could tell Donald Trump and his incoming administration, during your presidency, there will be a pandemic. Many scientists have criticized gain-of-function research, which involves manipulating viruses in the lab to explore their potential for infecting humans. See, there's different kinds of research that scientists perform. When you do gain of function research, the likelihood is a human being will be infected. And that human being will then infect another and then another, and it will continue to go until you have corpses all over this world. And so many scientists said, don't do gain of function research to Fauci. Don't do it. Because it's possible it could cause a global pandemic. But you know what? Fauci did it anyway. Fauci did it anyway. It creates a risk of starting a pandemic from accidental release. SARS-CoV-2, the virus now causing a global pandemic, is believed to have originated in bats. U.S. intelligence, after originally asserting that the coronavirus had occurred naturally, conceded last month the pandemic may have originated in a leak from the Wuhan lab. Now, folks, this came from Newsweek magazine, one of the three highly touted magazines in the United States. Fauci supported with millions of dollars the research, the implementation, and the spread of this current virus. The medical madman in the Beltway funded the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. And who knows where this will end? But how is the laboratory in China connected to the Vatican? Well, I'm glad you asked. Glad you asked. What do we know about Anthony Fauci? You say, well, why? Why would Fauci do something like that, knowing that it would cause death all over the world? Why would he do that? Well, for a few reasons. Selfishly, he could be a part of a vaccine and he could make billions of dollars. The other reason is because of his background and who the people are who he ultimately is working for to create a climate in this world where liberty of all kinds is destroyed. So, what do we know about Anthony Fauci? Well, this is common knowledge. His maternal grandfather, Giovanni Abyss, was born in Switzerland, was an artist noted for landscape portrait painting, as well as graphic design for labels, including olive oil cans. His grandparents immigrated from Italy to the United States in the late 19th century. Fauci grew up, what was his background? He was a Roman Catholic. Fauci attended Regis High School in Manhattan's Upper East Side, where he captained the school's basketball team and graduated in 1958. Regis High School in Manhattan's Upper East Side is a Jesuit high school. He then went on to Holy Cross, graduated in 1962 with a Bachelor of Arts in Classics. Holy Cross is a Jesuit institution. Wikipedia says the College of the Holy Cross, or better known simply as Holy Cross, is a private Jesuit liberal arts college in Worcester, Mass. Holy Cross is the oldest Catholic college in New England, one of the oldest in the United States. Here's Regis High School in Manhattan's Upper East Side. Regis Jesuit High School. Regis's legacy began with the will of a generous parishioner of the Church of St. Ignatius Loyola and with the dream of its pastor, Reverend David W. Hearn, Society of Jesus. Now, do we know who Ignatius Loyola was? To whom Regis High School was dedicated? Do we know who he was? He was the founder of the Jesuit order. He was a spiritualist. He died without hope of ever coming out of the grave. This man was possessed. The man was demonically possessed to bring about the control of a group of men that would eventually spread over the world to destroy civil and religious liberty and to destroy the middle class. Holy Cross, Jesuit institution. Born and raised in a devout Catholic family, attending Regis Jesuit High School for 4 years, Holy Cross for 4 more. His organization, the NIAID, sends nearly $8 million to the Wuhan lab to do controversial research that could leak a coronavirus all over the world, killing millions of people. A folk hero? Fauci is a mass murderer. During World War II, there was a Roman Catholic doctor in one of the most horrible concentration camps in Poland. It was called Auschwitz. And the Catholic Jesuit trained doctor that worked for the Germans at Auschwitz, his name was Joseph Mengele or Joseph Mengele. Joseph Mengele was responsible for the death of nearly 1 million people in the gas chambers at Auschwitz. And you know what we call Joseph Mengele? He's called in books the angel of death. That's what he's called, folks. What are we going to call Anthony Fauci? A folk hero? He is a mass murderer. That's what he is. But we've been taught, because whatever comes across the television, it's got to be true. Because those commentators, they would never lie to us. They have made Anthony Fauci into a hero when he is a devil. He is a cold-blooded killer. He planned it. He financed it. He foretold it would happen 3 years before it occurred. Anthony Fauci is what we call a Jesuit coadjutor. Now, what a Jesuit coadjutor is, he's not a priest, but he uses his profession to carry out the goals of the Jesuit order, to take over the world and to destroy all the gifts that Protestantism has given to us. What Fauci has done through this pandemic fits perfectly into the papal Jesuit plan to take over the world. Perfectly. From the book Truth Triumphant by B.G. Wilkinson, he said the Jesuits were past masters of the ways of deception. They were adept in the policy of secretly bringing on a public disaster. So they would create disasters, and then they would come forward with a solution. And everybody would think they were wonderful. And we have watched that happen for the last 7 months. Simultaneously, after they bring on some disaster, they provide for salvation from the last terrors of that disaster. And what will Anthony Fauci's suggestion be for this virus that he has created? A vaccine. And Anthony Fauci's going to put billions of dollars in his pockets and in the pockets of the order that he serves. Thus, they would be credited, the Jesuits would be credited with salvation from the extremity of the calamity, while others were blamed for the cause. Truth Triumphant, B.G. Wilkinson, page 316. A Jesuit coadjutor, it says they are Jesuit brothers. They work within the Jesuit communities as cooks, tailors, farmers, secretaries, accountants, librarians, maintenance support. We could add there lawyers, scientists, news commentators. They serve the order through the profession in which they're involved. They are known as temporal coadjutors. They assist the priest by undertaking the more worldly jobs, freeing the professed of the 4 vows and the spiritual coadjutors to undertake the sacramental and spiritual missions of the society. Now, Ellen White, in Great Controversy, pages 234 and 235, it's the only place in her book, and it's a masterpiece. It's the only place where she mentions the Jesuits. Martin Luther, the Protestant reformers, Luther stands at Worms in 1521 before the Holy Roman Empire and Charles V. 9 years later, the Protestant reformers, Philip Melanchthon and the Protestant princes of Germany, stand at the Diet of Augsburg. Luther could not attend because he was an outcast. He was an outlaw from society. So the Reformation was spreading. People were standing up and saying, I have liberty. Jesus died to free me. Jesus has empowered me to have honest professions. He has given me gifts by which I can take care of my family. So a middle class was born. And civil and religious liberty started prospering. And the Roman Church began to crumble. Began to crumble. But then a demon-possessed man by the name of Ignatius Loyola came into the Vatican to the Pope, Pope Pius III, I think it was. And he said, I will create an order of men who will do whatever I tell them to do. I will control them as robots, and they will do whatever I say. Just like the captain on the Titanic, Edward Smith. After 8 warnings, he had already been told, sink the Titanic. Nothing would turn him from his purpose. Edward Smith, as a Jesuit coadjutor, was a living cadaver, to be positioned and moved exactly as he was told. So Ellen White talks about the rise in the 1530s of the Jesuit order. It says the gospel of Christ had enabled its adherents to meet danger and endure suffering undismayed by cold, hunger, toil, and poverty, to uphold the banner of truth in the face of the rack, the dungeon, and the stake. To combat these forces, Jesuitism inspired its followers with a fanaticism that enabled them to endure like dangers and to oppose to the power of truth all the weapons of deception. There was no crime too great for them to commit, no deception too base for them to practice, no disguise too difficult for them to assume. Vowed to perpetual poverty and humility, it was their studied aim to secure wealth and power, to be devoted to the overthrow of Protestantism and the reestablishment of the papal supremacy. When appearing as members of their order, they wore a garb of sanctity, visiting prisons and hospitals, ministering to the sick and the poor, professing to have renounced the world and bearing the sacred name of Jesus, who went about doing good. But under this blameless exterior, their most criminal and deadly purposes were often concealed. It was a fundamental principle of the order that the end justifies the means. If you're ever watching a program on TV and somebody says to you, don't you remember the end justifies the means? Folk, you know exactly who is inspiring that movie or that show, because they're trying to get a principle across that comes straight from the devilish heart of the Jesuit order. The end justifies the means. So John Wilkes Booth, a knight of the Golden Circle, an arm of the Jesuit order, he could pull the gun and kill Abraham Lincoln, the greatest American president who has ever lived. Because the end justifies the means, the men that were stationed on the grassy knoll on the bridge there in Dealey Plaza in 1963, it was okay to assassinate John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Because the end justifies the means. As long as it prospers their order, lying, theft, perjury, assassination were not only pardonable, but commendable when they serve the interests of the church. And by the way, in 2001, while the world is still watching the embers and the smoke rising at the World Trade Center, at Ground Zero, the Seventh-day Adventist Church created a board whereby they said all Adventist leaders, pastors, elders, evangelists, teachers, hospital administrators, they would all be taught the principles of spiritual formation. And Malachi Martin, the Jesuit scholar who wrote the famous book, The Keys of This Blood, Malachi Martin said that when somebody takes spiritual formation, they become an obedient slave of the Pope. Spiritual formation, basically, the bottom line to spiritual formation is teaching people that whatever your superior says, that's law. If the superior says this carpet is purple and it's got white polka dots, that carpet is purple and has white polka dots. It's a form of mind control, hypnotism, where a person's mind is completely scrambled and they no longer have a mind of their own. That's why Malachi Martin could say, anybody who takes spiritual formation will become an obedient slave of the Pope. You take classes. And so the Seventh-day Adventist denomination, 19 years ago, in September of 2001, decided all Adventist leaders would take spiritual formation. And one of the people on the board that agreed to that was a man named Ted Wilson. What did Protestantism give to the world that the Jesuits want to overthrow? Protestantism gave us three things primarily: a middle class, civil, religious liberty. Prior to the Reformation, a middle class was something unknown. And in fact, if you visit in Central or South American countries today, there's the extremely wealthy and there's the very poor. There's no middle class in Central and South American countries. Why? Because Central and South America, they're all Catholic. They're all Catholic. How much do we owe to our Protestant forefathers who died that we might live free? You know, on the license plate, I believe it's in New Hampshire, it says, "Live free or die." When will the blood of our forefathers run through our veins? When we will either live free or die. We have a middle class. It's disappearing, but it's still there. But back before the Reformation, there were barons, there were lords, there were aristocrats,